I I think I blew it. I did the fourth show, focused I think on Vietnam, and quite truthfully, I need to rethink that. I'm just realizing I don't know if it was the fourth or the fifth show. There's some things that I need to explain about Vietnam. I wouldn't be who I am without Vietnam. Um, I would not champion the causes that I champion. I would not focus on the idea that we can choose assumptions that most help us to care. I I got into peace education after Vietnam. I became a Quaker. Um, all those things, none of that would have happened if it hadn't been for that. But there were some things I kind of have to realize. And that is, throughout that entire tour, it was dangerous, and I wasn't afraid. I do not understand why, because I was an expendable. When I say expendable, what I mean is that, well, we were the ones that would be in the front line. Um, there weren't as many whites as there were Latinos and blacks. And quite truthfully, if I were Latino or black, I'd be infuriated about it. I wasn't too happy about being an Anglo and being expendable. I was always on temporary duty assignments, and they were ridiculously crazy, insane. Um, and the dangers in them were paramount. The week before I would get there, there would be life loss, but not while I was there. I don't know why. Somebody was watching over me. My mom is a believer in miracles, and she told me later that her prayer was not so much that I would be safe, which I would have appreciated, but her prayer was that I would not have a rifle sighted upon somebody, pull the trigger, and watch them die. She felt that it would change me in such a way that I would never come out of it. I don't know. But that was her prayer. And in reality, whatever firefights I was involved in, I did not see specifically the people that were shooting at me or the ones that I was shooting at. I don't want you to misconstrue what I'm saying. It wasn't constant danger for me. Um, it was, but I would be put in these absolutely insane situations. Some Vietnamese general thought it would be a good idea to take this large city of Da Nang and completely surround it in a two-tiered fence. In other words, there'd be one fence of concertina, 100 yards between the next fence of concertina. So guys in their bulldozers would come in and bulldoze as jungle-like foliage, um, and then guys like me would be building the fence. Well, of course, the Viet Cong could come right up to the edge of the jungle and take pot shots at whoever they wanted to. Um, just the week before I got there on this temporary assignment, I believe it was the lieutenant died by picking up some material for the fence material, and there was a grenade under it. I don't know. There were so many stories going back and forth. I do know that building that fence, it was only a couple of weeks, building that fence, we came under fire from phosphorus from our own guys. And then one day we were attacked. The radio man was right next to me and got just a slight nick on his ankle. Uh, and he was right next to me. I don't know. It was crazy. It was insane. And you'd think that the United States government would kind of put it together that take a look at what was going on over there. There's a writer, I think it's a lady. Her name is Taylor Caldwell. I don't know for sure if she's a lady or a guy. And a lot of the books that she wrote dealt with the idea that big business was completely in cahoots with organized crime and the military industrial complex. And big power families knew that by advocating the small wars, they would be making fortunes. Well, everywhere I read a lot. I carried a satchel full of books with me. And I don't know how many books Taylor Caldwell wrote, but boy, I read a lot of them. Imagine being in the middle of a war situation like that, being an expendable, reading those kind of books. It did not improve my moral well-being or my uh, positive attitudes toward life. As I said, I wasn't afraid, and interesting enough, to be truthful, I wasn't even angry, but I was committed. If there was any way that war could end, if it was possible, humanly possible, to be a non warfaring species, I wanted to find out what it was. So when I left Vietnam, I went to the University of Hawaii and studied war peace studies or international relations. Ended up going toward education because there were about four theories as to why we fight. One theory is that it's learned behavior. So I said if I got into education and taught 4 year olds and 3 year olds to be peaceful, I was doing something right. I became a Quaker at that same time when I got out. Another theory is that it's biological. It is genetically inherited to defend and protect territory and possessions and people that we value. And this is why we fight. That it is a genetic reason. But there were some other reasons too. One of them was that God was mad at us and said, all right, you guys are going to act that way. You can go ahead and kill each other. And so it was a punishment from God. Um, there's another theory, I guess you'd call it that we just didn't know what was going on. And I was interested in, well, if you're going to be a promote peace, then you better take on all of the theories. So interesting enough, in terms of biological genetic, it would mean certain kind of games like football would be a good idea. We could get our aggressions out that way instead of trying to shoot one another. If it's learned behavior, teach peace. If it's God being mad at you, maybe a prayer or two or a bunch could convince God not to be so mad. And if it was all four combined somehow, then deal with all four. It didn't occur to me till years later that I would take on a philosophical point of view that included a fifth theory. And that theory is that we are incredible, incredible cosmic beings who once in a while get tired of sitting around being pure love and being pure knowledge without having any sense of time whatsoever, and no sense of beginning or ending, no sense of better than or worse than, no comparative sense. And we get tired of it. So we thought we'd come on down and experience the material world where we had all of it. We had time, we had comparison, somebody was better or worse. Um, we had things to strive for, to achieve, goals to try to conquer. We had meaning, I guess, if you want to call it that. We had purpose. We had challenges, mountains to climb. And interesting enough, that's the one that probably I adhere to most, is that we're incredible cosmic beings that get kind of bored, and so we come on down. I didn't think too much about that, but in Bisbee, Arizona, uh, I'm a Marine. And Marines usually don't say ex-Marine, they pretty well just say Marine. And would go to the coffee house, which was a bakery slash coffee house in Bisbee, where everybody would gather and talk about all kinds of things. And there was a Marine Corps colonel, a retired colonel, who ran the gun shop. How this happened, I don't know, but one day he and we got to talking. We were talking about war and strategies. And he mentioned a few interesting things. He said, you know, Greg, I can guarantee you that there's cosmic intervention in wars. I mean, there's so many situations when, like Pearl Harbor, the Japanese had a clear shot. Why didn't they take it? Like Korea, they ended at what, the 54th parallel? Why? We could have gone straight on in, but no. It's like cosmically somebody's up there kind of manipulating things a tad. I didn't think much about it, but it made sense to me. And then I asked him, what it was like being a lifer. I never once thought much about spending my full career in the Marines. They wouldn't have let me stay anyhow. Um, and he says, well, you know, we got to talking. I said, Mishner wrote a story about a lifer in the South Pacific. And the colonel says, yes, he did. Tales of the South Pacific, and it was the musical South Pacific. He says, that happened to me. I said, well, tell me about it. This is the Marine Corps colonel's story. He said, well, when I was around 18, 19, I became a lieutenant in World War II. And I got a vacation on a South Pacific Sea island. And honest to goodness, I fell in love with this native lady, and she begged me to stay there and get out of the war, or at least come back to her at the end of the war. And then he said, I didn't. And I said, why not? He says, because I realized, and this is what hurts, I realized that I would have been bored, silly, living in that paradise. So I might as well tell you the song or the story, and it goes like this. He was just 18 years of age when they called him off to the war, fighting in the South Pacific, a lieutenant in the Marine Corps. He got a vacation and he ended up on a South Pacific Sea isle. He was hoping and praying that he could stay there a while. Now, none of the natives felt the necessity for wearing clothes. And the right or the wrong of this, well, heaven only knows. He fell in love with one of the native girls and he got to thinking maybe he could give this lifestyle a whirl. He remembered she was standing on the beach, stark naked. The tears were running in her eyes. She said, when are you going to face your truth? When are you going to face your lies? She said, we make all of our problems. We make all our silly darn wars. And the only reason we do any of them is probably because we're bored. She said, why don't you stay here and make sweet love to me? He said, Mary, you don't understand. I've got my responsibilities. Not all men can live on a South Sea paradise. Some of us have to go off and do things that others don't think is very nice. Well, he ended up marrying another lady, had a bunch of children, and fought in a bunch of silly little wars. But in the evening, when he was all by himself, he'd fondly think of his past. At least, maybe that was one thing that just might last. He remembered she was standing on that beach stark naked. The tears were running in her eyes. She said, when are you going to face your truth? When are you going to face your lies? We make all of our problems and we make all our silly darn wars. The only reason we do any of them is just plain that we're bored. Just plain silly ass bored. That was the Marine Corps colonel's story. I turned it into a song, but it was pretty much verbatim. He said, Greg, I realized I would have been bored out of my mind living there on that island in a grass shack. And I was sad because I wondered how much of our lives and the problems that we face we've created just for no other reason than we want problems to solve. I don't know if it's true, but it is the philosophy that I take on that we created it, that we're the ones responsible for it, and that there really is no such thing as death or dying. I don't know. I'm sad. I'm going to continue on with this a little bit later. This is the end of this story right now. You and your entire family, you have a good life, okay? A really good life. And try to assume those things about yourself and the world around you that most help you to deeply, honestly, and actively care. To care for yourself, all others, the earth, and what's beyond the earth as best as you can. And don't forget to be the leaders and to choose leaders that embrace caring and withdraw your support from leaders who embrace disregard. Think about it. And by the way, if it's our higher selves, maybe if we have a word with our higher selves and we can say we as human beings don't want to hurt each other anymore and we don't want to hurt the planet, we can come on down and have challenges and we can grow and we can wonder and we can achieve. But this business of the small little wars or the big wars and the business of hurting the planet and taking advantage of the planet, that's going to stop. Think about it. Talk to your higher self and see what you can do. Anyway, you have a wonderful life, you and your entire family. I'll catch you the next time around.